Hello and welcome back to the vlog. Excuse the pads and the pump behind me in the background. I am finally sitting down to talk a little bit about postpartum with you guys. I've been meaning to for a long time now, but mom life is kicking my butt. It's hard for me to find time to really do anything, and I'm sure I'll get better at managing time and putting her down and things like that as time goes on. But right now it's a challenge for sure. So Steven's home putting her down for a nap right now. I can hear her like fussing every couple minutes. She's fighting it. And we waited a little too long to put her down. I think she's overtired. But anyway, if you didn't already check it out, go check out my birth vlog video. I give you all the details about going into labor and delivering at 37 weeks. And I talked a little bit about postpartum at the end, but I wanted to go into detail about my experience just because I feel like it was something that I was not prepared for, and a lot of the things that I experienced people don't tell you about. In defense of the people that I'm talking about, you don't really think to ask about that until you're in that situation. So Collins is absolutely perfect. Hopefully he can get her to sleep and come out here and show you guys. But we are loving the new parent life. It's exhausting and we're still learning her and getting the hang of things, but we are absolutely loving it. So where to begin? I guess right after she was born. So she was born on a Friday. She was born on Friday, March 19th, and she was born at 3 p.m. So we had pretty much the rest of the day with her, which was awesome. Something that really surprised me, after she was born, I just remember them putting her on my chest and getting all her measurements and things like that, and whatever APGAR score, and doing all the things that they needed to do, cleaning up all the things, and then they just left. And when I say they don't tell you anything, they don't tell you anything. I don't know if it was just my experience at my hospital or with the nurses. I don't know if I wanted them to tell me what to do or what, but they didn't even tell me to like try and get her to latch. Steven was like, I mean, should you feed her? I was like, I guess so. We'll see if we can get her to latch. No one was in there with me when she latched. It was just us. Like I said, I don't know if that's a typical experience, but we were just kind of thrown in there. And truly, 30 minutes later, I remember looking at Steven like, are they gonna come back in here? Like, we're just in here with our daughter by ourselves, which I know that time skin to skin after birth is really important, and I was definitely enjoying it all and taking it all in, and I was super pumped that she was latching and eating well, but I was definitely like, don't leave me alone, I don't know what I'm doing. And it was like an hour and a half before someone came back in, and they were talking about moving us to like the postpartum or recovery room or whatever it is. That was interesting. And also literally I think 2 minutes after I popped her out, 2 minutes after she was here, I looked at Steven and I was like, I need a large pepperoni pizza from Papa John's with extra garlic sauce, and was chowing down on that. So they moved us to the recovery wing, did some more testing on her. I was in a lot of pain post-delivery. So I mentioned in my last video, I wasn't good at pressing the epidural button because I didn't like the way the epidural felt, which I feel kind of silly for now. I think it was really more anxiety. My anxiety was at an all-time high for the birth, and that's because I went off of my Zoloft, my daily anxiety medicine, at 8 months pregnant. And looking back, I'm like, why on earth would I do that? I have been on Zoloft for years, and at 8 months pregnant, I decided, my doctor retired and I didn't know. No one told me. So I was trying to get a hold of her like via the portal. It wouldn't happen. I was trying to schedule an appointment virtually. They wouldn't refill my prescription, and they wouldn't do it virtually. And at that point, I'm 8 months pregnant. You know, I'm still at work, dealing with work stuff, dealing with writing sub plans, dealing with teacher of the year essays. And I was just like, you know, it is too much work. Screw it. I feel fine. I'll just go off the Zoloft. And I stopped cold turkey, which if you take an anxiety medicine, daily medicine, then you know that's really not a good idea. So I was off that, and I was really not in a good place already when she was born. So the epidural made me really anxious. I didn't like my legs feeling huge and not being able to move them. And I talked a little bit about it in my last video, but the epidural was placed incorrectly. It had to be replaced because I could feel everything that was happening on my left side. It was only working on the right side. That was a lot. I did not like that, and I didn't like to press the medicine button. But anyway, so by the end, the point in saying that is, by the end of delivery, when she was in my arms, I was in a lot of pain. like a lot of pain. And then as she was breastfeeding, I had to call the nurse back in because no one tells you that you continue to have contractions after the baby's born. And you actually will for weeks. When your baby breastfeeds, your uterus contracts to get back to its normal size. But first of all, I didn't know that. Second of all, I was not expecting it to be that painful. Could not talk through them. Type of contractions. It felt like the labor contractions that I was experiencing postpartum, and I was shocked by that. They had to give me some real strong pain meds right after she was born. I was in tears. It was taking my breath away to the point where it made me nervous to hold her, because when I would have one of the contractions, I would like physically move. Collins is crying. Is it all over her outfit?
I wiped it. Didn't feel that wet.
Come here, honey bun. Oh, she likes to look around. Oh, and I hear your tummy grumbling. Does somebody have some gas? You say hi to YouTube? Hi. This is Collins. See, I'm 5.5 weeks old. Oh, you got some gunk in your eye, which that's another thing that oh, burp rag. Lost it. That's another thing that I'll talk to you guys about. So, where was I? We went to recovery, and the nurses there were absolutely awesome. The night went pretty well. So the first night was just a normal night. We did know right away that her bilirubin numbers were a little high, so she was a little bit jaundiced, but the levels weren't so crazy that they were really concerned about it, so we weren't concerned either. My blood pressure was really high still after birth, so they were a little bit concerned about that. It was actually higher than it was before she was born. It was in the 150s over 90s, and their threshold that they told me from the very beginning was, listen, we get really concerned when it's at 160 over 110. So I wasn't there yet, but it was definitely higher. They were kind of just monitoring me closely. They took my blood pressure every 30 minutes. I had to keep the cuff on. So I thought we were gonna get to go home the next day. We were all just kind of assuming that, because I felt fine, Collins felt fine. Honestly, now that I look back, I realized that I did still have high blood pressure symptoms. Like I had a really bad headache, and even with the super strong pain meds they gave me after birth, it didn't go away. Visual changes, so I would see stars, and I was clearly in bed the whole entire time. Honestly, post-birth, if you watch my birth vlog, you'll hear me say it feels like she's coming out of my butt. Post-birth, the most painful thing was my butt, for sure. I did have second-degree tears, and I had stitches by my butt and my vagina. I tore in more than one place, and they were second degree, and I had a lot of stitches, but it hurt to sit down real bad. The first night truly wasn't that terrible. We just kind of took turns. She was up like, the first night, how often was she awake? I don't even remember. I wish we had vlogged it. We kind of stopped vlogging. She was probably awake like every hour or two. 2 hours?
I think where we were. Oh, and she was puking out all that stuff inside you.
Oh, yes. I remember that happened. So the first day she was laying down and literally started choking, coughing and sneezing up. I guess like the amniotic fluid and all the gunk from the womb is still, obviously, still inside them. So she was like coughing all that up, and we had to use the bulb syringe. Hi, are you smiling at me? Can you take the passy? Sometimes she won't take it. Okay, we're back. I had to get a little numb to sleep, so I completely forgot what we were talking about already. Okay, yes, jaundice. So her bilirubin numbers we knew were high, but they weren't at a level where they were super concerned. I think that it was like moderate high or some threshold that they go by. So we were just kind of like waiting with that. And then with me, we thought we were just monitoring my blood pressure, but they kept telling me that if it's under 160 over 110, then it's not terrible. So I was just kind of assuming that everything was going great. So we were up every couple hours that night. And then the next morning, I just got her to sleep. The pediatrician came by to see her, and they were by the morning they had already checked her bilirubin numbers again, and they had actually gone up. So the nurses seemed a little more concerned about it, but the pediatrician came by and looked at her bilirubin numbers and did like a physical assessment and said that she was perfect and that she doesn't need to be under the UV light, and filled out the discharge papers. So we were hopeful to be going home, and then the doctor that was on call, because my doctor was out of town, the doctor that was on call came and looked at me and talked to me and just kind of asked me how I was feeling. I said I was feeling fine, and I assumed she would put the discharge papers in. Something happened to where we thought Collins was gonna be able to go home, and then all of a sudden she wasn't gonna be able to go home, and then she was again. So it was like a roller coaster of emotions, and my blood pressure was already high, and I was so ready to get home with her that it was just like, I don't know. I found out we could go home. I got excited. I found out we couldn't. I cried. Found out we could again. Got so excited. And then the nurse was like, all right, we're just waiting on your doctor to put through the discharge papers. I'm just gonna give her a call and remind her real quick to make sure that she'll put those in. Called my doctor. My doctor was like, no, I don't want to discharge her. So like after the second time being told that we're not gonna go home, and I was just so ready. And I know some people talk about how they were like, no, please don't let me leave the hospital. I don't know. Looking back now, I don't know why we were so excited to leave. I think because my family couldn't be there. And I'm so close to my family, and they drove home from the beach early from their vacation to see her, and I wanted them to meet her, and I just wanted to start, you know, settling in our home. So when my doctor said that she was not going to discharge me, I was so bummed, like sobbing my eyes out. My parents were already at the hospital, like waiting to greet us as we left, and I just was not in a good place. I mean, your hormones are already so insane, and then, you know, me being anxious about my blood pressure, me being anxious about her jaundice, me being anxious about all the things, I was very upset. Not only did we not get to leave on the 20th, the Saturday, the next day, they said that since we were gonna be staying another night, we might as well get Collins under the UV light for her jaundice. So essentially jaundice is just too much bilirubin, which is something in her blood, I think, and your liver doesn't break down the bilirubin as efficiently when you're jaundiced. I just made that up. I think that's it though. UV, and when you pee and when you poop, that flushes the bilirubin out, and you want to get the bilirubin out so your jaundice levels go down. So they were like, since she's gonna be here, we might as well put her under the UV bed, which I was really bummed about because I can't hold her when she's in the UV bed, and all you want to do is hold your baby. But you know, it was what was best for her. They brought in the UV bed, and she screamed. I mean, for the next 4 days after that, she was hoarse, if that gives you an idea about how she screamed. And I could tell because of the way she was crying relentlessly. No consolation. Well, you couldn't console her because she was in the UV bed and they didn't want you to take her out. And I asked, like, can we turn the UV light over here and I can hold her and we can both be under it? And they were like, no. So that was absolutely awful. I think we found that out at like, maybe she started to be in the bed at like 1 or 2 p.m. and she was in the UV bed all day and all night. And our night nurse we had that night was truly an angel. I did not want Collins to leave and go to the nursery. I really didn't. The whole entire time in recovery, I said that. When she was in the UV bed, she was screaming so nonstop because they put you in there, they put her in there in her diaper. And you know, right when your baby's born, they're used to being snuggled up in your womb, and their moro or startle reflex is just insane. So she's sitting there in a diaper, like startling herself and waking herself up and screaming nonstop. And I'm crying because she's crying and I can't do anything, and my blood pressure and anxiety is like next level. And I still hadn't asked for meds at this point. I still hadn't really talked to my doctor about my anxiety. My doctor knew I had anxiety, but since she was born, and like the whole week before, like I had known that I was kind of struggling with my anxiety, and I didn't say anything. So up till this point, I still hadn't said anything. The night nurse, like I said, was amazing, calming her down, trying all different holds, and then she would get her to sleep and she would put her down in the UV bed and she would startle herself and wake herself up. And I couldn't get her to stop crying. Steven couldn't get her to stop crying. This nurse was the only person who could get her to stop crying, which is an awful feeling as a mom. But also, like, I couldn't get up and walk around the room and try different holds like Steven could or like the nurse could because I was in so much pain still having those contractions. I mean, it hurt to sit, it hurt to walk. It hurt to walk for probably 5 to 7 days. I remember going back to the doctor 3 days later, which I'll get to, and waddling in still, like having to walk with my legs farther apart because it hurt so bad still. Finally, I looked at the nurse and I was like, I need you to take her. Like, I cannot sit here all night and listen to her cry like that. I'm literally gonna stroke out. My blood pressure was so high and it just kept climbing listening to her cry. So that was her second night. The second night was by far 10 times worse, and I know it was because of the UV bed, but it was hard. So she was in the nursery for a good couple hours. I probably asked her to take her to the nursery at 1 a.m. and she didn't come back until 6 a.m. So she was gone for a good chunk of time. And I did miss her because I know I should have been sleeping, but I couldn't sleep because I was in a lot of pain and anxious, and it was awful. That night goes by, we wake up, we check her bilirubin numbers, they had gone down. Not a ton, but we weren't worried about being able to go home the next morning, because if the pediatrician was going to discharge her when her numbers were where they were the day before, now that they were lower, we knew that he would discharge her. So he came by again, examined her, put the discharge papers in, and then my doctor actually put the discharge papers in before she came to see me again. So finally we were going home, and I was so freaking excited. And I just remember leaving that room. First of all, it takes so long to get discharged. Like I'm sitting there wanting so badly to go home, but I'm still kind of feeling like crap. So postpartum wise, I'm in pain. I'm very, very anxious. My blood pressure is still borderline 140s over 80s. I think when I was leaving, I still had that headache that I hadn't told anyone about, and I still was having those visual changes, and my swelling was still insane, but they said that was typical and that it can take a week or two postpartum for your swelling to go down. But I wasn't telling anyone about those symptoms. When the doctor came to see me and she asked how I felt, I was like, oh great, because I wanted to go home. So I'm anxious about those things that I know are happening, but no one else really knows they're happening. I don't even think I had talked to Steven about it at that point. So we put her in the car seat. Steven's like trying to figure out the car seat, and I remember him buckling her legs into the armholes to where her legs are like up. And I was on the other side of the room, and the nurse walks in and was like, no. I was like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. So we got her hooked up in the car seat. We came home. I don't think Cooper met her that night. So my family met us at the house, and he was at my parents' house at this point. And I know I've talked about in other vlogs, we were so nervous about Cooper meeting her, not because we thought he would like hurt her or anything on purpose or be aggressive, but because he's so big and he's the baby. He thinks all toys are his, like mama's boy, and she's gonna be attached to me pretty much always. So that night he did not meet her. My family came and met her, which was so sweet. My mom had gotten one of those storks in the front yard that said like all her birth stats, and I was still feeling like crap. That night I feel like she probably slept or woke up every hour or two again like she did in the hospital, but she sleeps in a bassinet right next to me. Oh, that night was when my anxiety like got way worse, because my headache wouldn't go away no matter how much medicine I took, and I was still seeing stars, and I knew that those were symptoms of high blood pressure. Oh, and I don't think I mentioned this, they finally did classify me as having postpartum preeclampsia. So preeclampsia, high blood pressure, all those symptoms that I'm talking about. Eclampsia is a seizure. So they were worried about me having a seizure. So I go home and I know I still have these high blood pressure symptoms, and they didn't give me medicine for high blood pressure. So then I'm working myself up and getting so anxious about having a seizure that I start to have panic attacks, anxiety attacks. So I've had anxiety attacks before, that's why I'm on medicine. And usually it's like feeling like I can't breathe and hyperventilating. I didn't hyperventilate, but I was short of breath. I felt like I couldn't get a full breath. I was having crazy chest pains, numbness and tingling in my arms and hands, heart racing, things like that. Apparently those can be symptoms of high blood pressure as well, but they are also symptoms of anxiety attacks and panic attacks. I knew in my heart that those symptoms that I was feeling were not related to my blood pressure, and I knew it was my anxiety. But if you have anxiety, you'll understand, like, you can't really convince yourself that you're fine. I was telling myself that it didn't work, is what I'm trying to say. So that was a really awful night. I didn't get much sleep, not because of the baby. She was sleeping and I was not sleeping. And you know, when you're exhausted, it makes everything 10 times worse. And I think also that might have been the night where my mom came to stay the night, and she was up all night with me. Of course, you know, the baby was perfect, so the baby was asleep, and my mom was taking care of me because she is an angel and stayed up with me. I think I maybe got 30 minutes of sleep that night, probably not. Woke up short of breath, heart racing. It's hard to sleep when you feel those things. So the next day, I'm still feeling like crap. My dad and my mom are over here, and I'm like, I know my blood pressure is high. I'm gonna freak out. I need to go get my blood pressure taken. So Steven goes to CVS to buy one of the blood pressure cuffs, even though I know that those are not reliable, the ones that you buy from the store. Took it, it was like 160 over 98 or something like that, and I burst into tears, freaking out. I was in such a bad place. Anyway, I was convinced that I was going to seize and die. But I was also having this battle with myself, like, I don't really want to call the doctor, because if I call the doctor, they're going to tell me to come in, and I do not want to go back to the hospital. Eventually my anxiety won, and I was too nervous about having high blood pressure that I broke down and called my OB. I called her and I got the nurse, and the nurse, I kind of didn't like how she reacted. When I, told her I just didn't feel right, my heart was racing, the numbness and the tingling in the hands, the headache, the visual changes, she was like, you can come in and get your blood pressure taken, but just know that if it's high, she is gonna readmit you. And I didn't really like that reaction because it was kind of like, well, what are you trying to tell me? Are you trying to tell me that you don't want me to come in because you don't want me to get readmitted, or that I shouldn't come in or should? I was kind of anxious about that reaction, but as much as I didn't want to be readmitted to the hospital, I knew that I couldn't do another night like the night before where I was just up sick because I was so anxious. It's really hard to take care of a newborn when you can't take care of yourself. I ended up going back to the doctor. They squeezed me in. I was waiting for like 3 hours. Checked my blood pressure. It was 150s over 90s. She checked me, talked to me, and was like, listen, I don't feel comfortable letting you go home. Talked about the seizure again, which of course freaked me out. So I start bawling, crying in her office because she's telling me that I'm gonna be readmitted. I need to go be examined. They're gonna take my vitals for a certain amount of time and see what the next steps are. So that is Monday. So 3 or 4 days after I had her. We had been home for 1 day. I remember being super freaked out because I didn't want to go back to the hospital because I was worried about having a stroke or seizure, whatever it is, because I was worried about being separated from Collins and breastfeeding. It's my baby. I gave birth to her 3 days ago. Like, I'm not gonna go to the hospital if she can't come with me. So that was like the first thing that I asked my doctor, and she called and I got permission to have Steven and Collins to be able to come with me. At that point, I didn't know that I was going to be staying the night at the hospital. I thought I was just gonna go be monitored and see what happened and maybe leave on some blood pressure medicine. So I go, I'm monitored for an hour. She doesn't like my blood pressure, doesn't like my blood work. Actually came back fine. I remember her coming back fine, and the nurse coming and being like, that's a great sign, like your blood work is great. But I still had those symptoms. So I still had the headache, I still had the visual changes, I still had the racing heart, I still had the swelling that was unreal, and my blood pressure was high. This is like maybe 6 p.m. My doctor comes and tells me that I will not be leaving because they treat symptoms, not the blood work. So the fact that I'm feeling the way I'm feeling and feeling the things I'm feeling, they're not gonna let me go home. They were worried about me having a seizure and it turning into eclampsia. And they moved us into this big room, and the hospital bed, the sides of the hospital beds were padded, and I was so swollen. She said, what did she say about my veins? They were third spacing or something like that. If you're a nurse, maybe you know what that means, but they couldn't find a vein. I felt so awful at that point and so anxious. I think they poked me 4 times to try and get the IV in. I had already had my blood taken like 3 times that day. I was just beat up. I had taken 1 shower since I gave birth to her 4 days ago. I was in a really bad place. They decided, she told me that I was gonna be on magnesium. I didn't know anything about magnesium. The only thing the nurse told me was that I was gonna feel crappy and that my headache would probably get worse. And that was the understatement of the century. She told me that usually it's a 24-hour dose, but she didn't think that I was gonna be on the magnesium for a full 24 hours. So she was hopeful that I would be able to leave late that night. So in my mind, I'm still convincing myself, okay, I'm gonna leave tonight. Get hooked up to the magnesium. They had like the compression leggings on me because my swelling was so bad. So kind of like a blood pressure cuff that like squeezes and stops. Anyway, so I had those attached to my legs. I'm in this padded hospital bed. Like, what is wrong with me? Thinking that, well, I'm kind of nervous now. This kind of seems like a big deal. They can't find a vein. Like, I feel like something's wrong with me. And so my anxiety, it was off. The magnesium starts, my headache got 10 times worse. I was nauseous the whole entire time, dizzy the whole entire time, couldn't see straight, literally seeing 10 of everything. They did not allow me to be alone with the baby. I really only got to hold her when I nursed, and Steven had to be right next to me. They had to take me to and from the bathroom. The amount of like urine output was being measured every single time. It was super, super intense. Felt like you have the flu or you're dying. Yeah, pretty much. I also remember them coming in and they kept checking your reflexes because they don't want you to have too much magnesium. They have to keep checking your mag levels as you're on it. But magnesium is essentially a muscle relaxant. So if they think that you're gonna have a seizure, they give you magnesium to relax your muscles so you don't have a seizure. So I'm still hopeful that we're gonna go home that night after getting, I don't know, maybe 10 hours of the mag. No, I spike a fever. I convinced myself I'm dying. At one point I literally looked at the nurse and I was like, am I dying? My milk was coming in, so I was in a lot of pain there and just felt sluggish, which your milk coming in is enough to make you feel like crap on top of the magnesium. I have pictures, I'm gonna put pictures. I took selfies, like I looked like death and felt like death. So when I spiked a fever, I remember looking at the nurse being like, could that be my milk? Like trying to justify the fact that I'm having a fever. And she was like, you're almost at 102. It's a little too high for your milk to be coming in. Never found out why I spiked a fever. I guess it was just my body reacting to the mag. I don't know, but I did. The doctor came later that night and was like, you are gonna have to stay on the full 24 hours of mag, which was like 5 p.m. the next day, y'all. I lost it. But it also was the first time that I talked to the doctor about my anxiety. I know that these symptoms are anxiety symptoms, but I cannot sleep. Like, they are real. Regardless of if they are my anxiety, these are things that I'm feeling. So that's when they started me back on my Zoloft. Finally, they gave me Ambien to sleep because I wasn't sleeping. Can't take care of a baby when you're not functioning as a human being. So we got through it, but it was truly the worst experience. Okay, my camera died. We're being flexible. I'm recording on my phone because this is the first time that I've had time to sit down and record this video. And if I stop, it's not gonna happen. So like I was saying, that was like day 5 or 6 and Steven only had 5 days off work. So I think he had 2 days with us at home before he started back at work. We didn't really have time to like get in a routine or get in a groove together at home. So that was a bummer. The next couple nights were still really rough in terms of my postpartum anxiety and just my already existing anxiety. They had prescribed me Zoloft, but only enough until I got home. So I didn't have any more Zoloft. So immediately the first call when I got home was to my primary care doctor to get an appointment. It was a new doctor because mine had retired. So I went in the next day. I just remember sobbing in front of this new doctor and at the end being like, I am so sorry. You probably think I'm a mess. But so she prescribed me my Zoloft and then prescribed me some Ambien to be able to sleep. I actually only ended up having to take the Ambien one night, and the rest of the time, like, I was able to breathe through and calm myself down. The nights are always worse. And if I'm being completely honest about postpartum anxiety was real. Postpartum anxiety attacks, panic attacks. I haven't had a panic attack in like a week or 2, so that's nice. Blues are a real thing. I'm still honestly feeling kind of blue, but I'm talking to people and was referred to see a therapist about my anxiety in general. My mom has been awesome and pretty much come over. My mom and my sister have pretty much come over every single day. And it's nice because I have help with the baby, but honestly, that's not really about help with the baby. It's more about company for me. Sitting at home alone, adjusting to your new normal is hard. I am blessed to not have dealt with the postpartum depression side of things. And, I've never had an ill thought or been mad or sad at Collins or at Steven, at anyone. It's just been anxious and I've been a little bit sad. But I'm just adjusting to life as a new mom, and this is stuff that people don't talk about enough, I feel like. I'm feeling a lot better in terms of anxiety, feeling more like myself. The blues are supposed to go away after like 2 weeks, so I don't know if what I'm feeling is more of a depression, but I'm not having like super dark thoughts or anything. It's more just feeling lonely. But I'm talking to people and I'm getting help, so this got really dark really quick, but that's kind of like my experience postpartum. Okay, it's the next day. I'm finally getting around to ending the vlog. I was recording and realized how long my postpartum anxiety and postpartum experiences. I was gonna talk to you about all the things we've been dealing with Collins, but I think I'm gonna do a separate newborn video for that, just because there's so much to talk about of things that have happened with her. I truly think she's preparing me to be world's most chill parent for baby number 2 because of all the things that we've been through with her. Now, we're blessed and she's healthy, and it could be so much worse, but definitely lots of things that no one talks about and things we weren't prepared for with having a newborn. So I'm gonna make a separate video on that, but thank you if you watched all the way through the whole entire video. I'm hoping that this video resonated with some of you in terms of postpartum anxiety or maybe just anxiety in general. So anyway, thanks again for watching, and I'm gonna try and make sure that my next video is up in a little bit more of a timely manner. I know it's been like 2 weeks since my last one. Plan on doing a newborn video and then a day in the life video or 24 hours with a newborn too, because I'm hoping to have Collins on my channel a little bit more. But thank you again for watching. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe, and I will see you guys later.